and my sisters, only they can understand. We'll fight this war together, together we
Hey everybody,
will
it's
stand.
Joe, and thanks for tuning in to TVO Campfire. What this show's about is about successful veterans, and they're bringing you the stories and their experiences. And we hope that it can provide inspiration to each of you out there, or maybe a veteran that you know to help in their life.
Welcome to TVO Campfire. Today we have a United States Air Force veteran who is near and dear to my heart. He's a highly skilled solo entertainer and singer who has been entertaining the audience by putting smiles on faces and warming people's hearts, igniting song in the soul, and inspiring people to get up and move. His background in music takes him deep from Texas to the Hollywood music industry and back again. Along the journey, he has developed skills in event management, event planning, singing, television, music production, theater production, songwriting, recording, festivals, interpersonal skills, acting. But more than that, he's done things like, well, music literacy, and he even works with children. And he's going to tell us more about that. Welcome to the show, Jerone Roy Sr. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to speaking with everyone.
We're so delighted to have you because you have dedicated your life to just bringing so much joy to people, and you have really brought about so much to sharing it with children and bringing out what they have to in literacy. And there's so much that we're going to talk about with that too, but let's just start out with how you started in your own childhood. And I know, Joe, you've got some questions, so I'm going to let you kick it off.
Yeah. Hey, first off, I don't even know how you can follow that introduction up, Jerome. It looks like you got some big shoes to fill today on this show with that
I'll tell you,
introduction.
Man.
Yeah, she definitely let you up. All right, so let's run with it. So, let's go all the way back. Let's go all the way back from when you were a little kid growing up. Where were you born? What were you into? Sports? Did you get into music, singing, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, born in Dallas, Texas, and I basically took an early interest in, well, before school, prior to even school. I grew up in a Baptist church. My mother and father were very, very active, and not only that, we didn't live very far from the church, so it was a pretty constant regime as far as being at church quite a bit, even during the week. And a lot of what has really been a blessing to me, I didn't know it at that time, or didn't even see it at that time, and the value of getting a spiritual background and at an early age and time, how important that would be later on in my life. I didn't have a clue about all that, but they knew, and they gave me an opportunity to be exposed to that, and I'll always be grateful to them for that, because it really is important to have a spiritual base in your life, no matter what you end up doing. And even during that time, my mother, I don't even remember exactly the time when it happened, but I do remember a time when I found myself being a part of a family singing group in the church. My little baby brother and my sister, which is 1 year older than myself, we were all of a sudden doing performances in the church, and when we would go visit other churches, and that kind of stuck with me. Didn't really resonate with me until later on, but it stuck with me in my memory to never forget, the opportunities we had to do things like that. But I didn't have any idea that I would come back to that same music, exposure later on. Like when I got ready to graduate from high school, I got into a talent show, and I've always been, and growing up, pretty quiet and reserved, bashful type of person. I was tall and skinny and everything. And, I wasn't too boisterous of speaking to people or putting myself out on Front Street. So I was really shocked to find myself in a talent show performing some music, singing, in other words, in front of a large crowd. But what it did is it ignited a spark in me and created a bug for the music at that time. It introduced me to a whole new person that was within me. I didn't even know that person existed. And so after that, that's really what kind of sparked my interest to, after high school, to go ahead and join the military, because at that time, of course, the draft was still going on. This was like in the late 60s and everything. So I wanted to get that out of the way just in case something really developed with the music. That wouldn't be a situation as far as getting drafted right in the middle of something happening in a music career. So that was my reason for making that decision. So a lot of things happened, but I do know you probably have a few other questions about the military, so I won't jump too far into that. I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, I actually kind of want to go back. What part of Dallas and what high school do you end up going?
It was actually in the East Dallas, like right, there's a state fair in Dallas, and the actual church at my house was, I'd say about maybe 10 or 11 blocks down south of the state fairgrounds. And so that was, I basically called it Southeast Dallas. And I went to elementary school that was called Paul Lawrence Dunbar. And was there for elementary, probably up until the, I think maybe 4th or 5th grade. And then that's when, at the time, my mom and dad made a transition and moved, not necessarily out of Dallas, but on the borderline of Dallas and Wilma Hutchins, which at the time made a change for me educational-wise, because the school that I was assigned to go to at that time was not in Dallas Independent School District. It was actually in Wilma Hutchins. They call it Wilma Hutchins School District. That ISD doesn't exist anymore, but at that time it did. So I was required to go to that particular school, and that was the school I was telling you about, where I ended up doing the talent show and everything. And before the talent show, I had an interest in basketball. I thought I wanted to really make a career in basketball. I had a passion for it. But as I was getting a little older toward the end of my high school, my competition was getting bigger, much bigger and stronger, stepping on my toes, squashing my big toes and everything. I said, wait a minute, this is not the way this should go. I need to get bigger and stronger, or I need to think of something else to do, So that's basically where I kind of grew up at. And that, again, was the area where I was in school, and the latter part was on the borderline of Hutchins, Wilma Hutchins in Dallas.
Now, did you have family in the military, or did you know anybody at that time in the military?
I had an uncle that was a career veteran in the Army. I think he spent more than 20 years in there, which was another blessing for me, because once I was in the military and doing my little stint, I got assigned to go over to Germany. And I was stationed at Simbach, Germany, which is right close to a little town called Kaiserslautern. And just turns out he was not far. He was stationed over there at that particular time, not far from where I was. And so that was a really blessing for me to be able to engage with him over there and spend some time. It just really, really, really was a blessing to me, because he was like a dad. I mean, it's just as good as me seeing my dad over there. He was just that close of an uncle to me. And he was so proud to show me around to his friends and all that. So it was really good. I really enjoyed that.
How did you decide which branch you were going to enlist in?
Well, actually, I kind of just maybe took a look at the different branches, and for some reason, I know it just the Air Force kind of just attracted my attention, appealed to me a little bit more, and I wasn't really thinking in terms of trying to really be involved in as far as a lot of serious things related to combat and things like that. But I was more or less thinking in terms of business and administration, because right before I finished high school, I fell in love with bookkeeping and accounting, one of the courses I was taking in high school, and I really had a little desire to want to pursue that. So when I enlisted, I wanted to go into the field of business and administration, but unfortunately, that didn't work out. Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. So did you know at that time that you were also an entertainer?
Well, yes, I did. Matter of fact, ever since the high school talent show, and I met this new person inside of me. I liked that person, and it gave me a lot of confidence that, well, you really can do something in front of a large crowd. And as bashful and shy as you are, I found out that once you step on that stage, it's a whole different world, and you don't think about hardly anything else other than what's going on that stage, and it's a good place. I love it.
Did you have any perception kind of about the military prior to going in? And you're just like, hey, I'm just going to go tackle this head on? Or you was like, no, I'm doing it and I'm going to make my own success?
Yeah. And I guess my situation was, because of my commitment, just wanted to do the service because of the draft situation. I didn't want to get involved with some music and then get drafted, because something like that happened at that particular time to Elvis Presley, and I paid attention to that. So I said, well, I don't want that to happen to me. Should I have an opportunity to do something with music, I wouldn't want that to happen to me. So the only way to solve that is just go ahead and enlist and do your duty, and that way that can't happen. So that was kind of my motivation. But it turns out that it was a blessing in disguise as well, because even while I was over in Germany in the military, I had an opportunity. I would sit in with different bands as they would, every month they would change and have bands come through, and I would sit in with the different bands that came through, and they gave me a little taste of what it really feels like to be performing with live musicians and instruments and things like that with people. Because with the talent show, that was just a little taste to kind of get me ready. And even though I did just a little bit more performing locally, not a whole lot, but whenever I had some opportunities, I had put a little singing group together to try to do some things, and mostly for exposure and things like that. But once I got in the military and received that opportunity, I was even able to get free leave of absence for a while to participate. They have a European-wide talent contest over there. I don't know if they're still doing it or not, but at that time they were. And so I was able to even be relieved of duty and go participate in that, because I guess by, representing the base that I was coming from, they supported me with that. And that paid off for me really, really good too, because we did a good job and got some good exposure it was a really great experience for me just to be able to do that. So after that particular situation happened, I also continued to meet other entertainers that were coming through visiting, and was even offered an opportunity to travel with one of them. They said, if you wasn't in the military, we would love for you to travel and tour with us. And they were going all over Europe, and I mean, just all over the place. It was a family group, brothers and sisters and husband and wives and things like this, but they were a really good group. And they had a lot of talent. The guitar player spoke 7 languages. So I said, wow, this is amazing.
That's a good deal. I know a lot of those places I went to, I wished I would have had a translator. Instead
Right.
Here I am, the big tall American walking around all these places, just doing the head nod, like, yeah. I don't, whatever. But
yeah.
So when you first came in, you're on the enlisted side of the house, Jerome?
Yes, I did enlist, and I was supposed to be in there for 4 years. But as I mentioned to you earlier, because I had signed up to be in the business administration, unfortunately, I think it was either San Antonio or somewhere like that while I was doing my basic training. Somehow, because of, I guess, the Vietnam War going on at the time, they had a very high need for people in security and law enforcement. So, unfortunately, unbeknownst to me, in other words, until after the fact, they switched me over to a different career side of things with the law enforcement, security law. I said, well, that's not what I signed up for. We know, but just, kind of stay with us, and we'll do all we can to get you, where you signed up for and cross-trained and everything. And I kind of went through that for about 2 years, hearing that side of the story, so to speak. But it eventually came down when I was in Germany over there, serving my tour over there, that they gave me an option. They said, well, I'll tell you what, this was a military lawyer that jumped in and spoke up for me and said, look, you're either going to cross-train this man now, or you're going to give him an early out and receive the same honorable discharge that he would receive if he stayed the full 4 years. And of course, he said that, it's up to you. What would you like to do? You want to, finish out the 4 years, or you want to take the early out with the 2 years that you have already? And it was exactly 2 years, basically. And he said, I said, are you sure it's the same honorable discharge that I would get, during the full 4 years? He said, yes. Yeah. So I said, you know what? For 2 years, they kept kind of stringing me along and things like this. I said, I just really don't want to take the chance anymore. If what you was telling me is true, then I'll go ahead and take the early out, and that's what I did.
So across that whole time that you were in, was Germany the only place you got to really go and just visit, or / enjoy, as some people like to say?
Yeah. Well, I see. What was it? I think Arkansas, I think, is one of the other places where I was temporarily assigned at one time. And I think just maybe a couple of places in the States before I got shipped over to Germany to do that tour duty over there. But even everywhere I went, it was kind of the same thing. I immediately try to find out, well, what's going on with the music scene around here, and even, meeting a lot of guys from different places all over the country. That's one thing I really enjoyed about the military as well. You meet so many guys from different places, and I mean, just great people with a lot to share, a lot of stories to tell, and a lot of camaraderie, there. And it's a good thing. And the good thing about Uncle Sam is that, of course, you grew up pretty fast. You learn to not be dependent on everybody else, depend on yourself first, and he gets you what you call orientated pretty fast, especially boot boot camp. Learn how to pick up behind yourself, clean up, and make your own bed. I mean, not just make your bed or pull the covers up, you make the bed. I mean, in other words, okay, you may have made your bed at home that way, but let me show you how we do it here and how you're going to do it from now on. And so all of that culture shock of that was pretty exciting, and again, you couldn't really complain too much because you're not being singled out. Everybody dances to the same music. And that's what I kind of enjoyed about that too. You learn a lot, it teach you a lot about responsibility, how to be creative and just how to learn to grow up and, not say forget about everything mom and dad teaches you, but learn how to learn some new things and do things in different ways. That's going to make you a better person,
So do you stay in touch with any of those friendships and relationships that you developed from your time in service?
Well, I wish I could say yes, but the most guys that I was doing service with in Germany, I have no idea where those guys, originated. Went to, and it's just, a disconnect at that particular time. But those memories will always be embedded and instilled in my mind because, like the guys that I was singing with, some of them was not even in my particular, unit or anything. They were doing different jobs and different parts, sections on the bass and everything. But it just so happened that when it came to that particular music project, that's how we became very close, like brothers, and got to travel together and do something we really enjoyed with that passion for music and everything. And so I'll never forget those guys because, matter of fact, that particular singing group, I was actually in competition against. It was like a 5-man. I take that back. It was a 3-man singing group, and myself and another person were competing in the talent show, and those guys actually won the talent show on that bass. But they liked the way we sounded so much that they said, well, hey, would you guys like to join us? And so we became a 5-man singing group, and that's what helped us to go further in the competition.
That's fantastic. And you were saying, you ended up loving entertaining so much. This is what you've done for your entire life, and you have done so many things. After you ended up finishing your contract, you took your early out. Did you end up seeing anybody else that from some of these gigs that went on within the military, some of the talent shows that you had, did you see them trying out for any of the same performances or just or on the entertainment road? You went from Texas to Hollywood and on other roads throughout your journey. Did you see them trying out for some of the same things? Or
well, as far as the military counterparts there, I never crossed paths with any of those guys again. But in my journey, as far as in California is concerned, when I came back to Texas, the whole thing was basically I still wanted more opportunities than what was available in Dallas, Texas. So unfortunately, that meant leaving Texas, which I did do at the beginning of 1970 and ended up being in California for a complete whole decade until the beginning of 1980. But in the beginning of 1970, coming into California after the love child type movement in California, everybody loved each other and wanted to hug you and and just show their love and everything. Came in on the cups of that at a good time because, again, a lot of, especially musicians, were very open to sharing and embracing you, no matter who you were and where you came from and all that. So it was a good time to come into that environment. I was in San Francisco in the Bay Area and met a lot of people from that particular area, Oakland, Berkeley, a lot of people in the Bay Area were doing some things musically. That was during the time when very popular groups like the Whispers and Tower Power, all these guys were emerging pretty fast. And fortunately for me, there was a local band that worked with me at one time, and a guitar player, bass player, and drummer that was working with that particular band went on to become a part of Barry White's live performing orchestra. And they were with him for about a couple of decades. And so that is how I ended up getting a chance to, as far as having an experience in Hollywood and getting to learn some things, was the guitar player that was with Barry White was someone that I had met locally in San Francisco. And so he was like a brother to me. He was very down to earth and didn't mind sharing and teaching me some things about what was going on in his world of the superstars, so to speak. And that really helped me a lot, gave me a lot of insight. He invited me to come to one of the rehearsals that Barry orchestra that they do before they get ready to go out on tour. That taught me a lot about how the machinery works and how some of the things behind the scene works with the big people. And so it was a good thing, a good experience. And I really appreciated that from him at the time. He's expired now. He passed away a few years back, but I still owe him a lot for what he shared with me and helped me to do. And I did get a chance to, do some things while I was there that helped me to grow and to benefit from everything I learned while I was in there during that decade. And right before I got ready to leave California, to kind of wrap up things, so to speak, God tapped me on the shoulder. You mentioned about the children earlier. He tapped me on the shoulder and just says, hey, buddy, I have a little something I need you to do for me. And I had no idea that little taste of working with children, which came from a grant from the California Arts Council, I had no idea that when God said, I want you to do this, that I would end up doing it for quite a while after that happened. But it let me know that this was part of something that became, part of my purpose of what he created me for. And that's to help our children, because he made me understand, the children are our future. And without them, we really have no future. And so you have to focus on them. And I've been telling people that for years. You need to focus on the children, because if we don't work with them and help them and guide them and, nurture them, then we don't have a future. So that's why I still to this day, because once I promised God that I would do that for him for the rest of my life, then I'm still doing it. And I still, plan to continue doing it as long as I'm breathing.
When you got out, did they have any type of a separation assistance program for you, or did you have any idea what you were going to do?
Well, not really. I really didn't tell you the truth, and the main thing, the main thing that I was thinking about at that time is, how to get things going and get back into the desire and focus on trying to pursue something with the music. And so that's what my agenda was at the time. And that's why I immediately basically got in school because of doing my upbringing in the music industry. Everything was by the ear. I didn't know how to read or write music at all. I look at the notes and stuff like that on paper. I said, well, it looks like Greek to me. How does anybody understand all that? So that was my first order of business coming back, to Texas. Enrolled in a commercial music program at the Cedar Valley College, and they had excellent teachers that were all graduates from University of North Texas. And they weren't just great musicians, but they were great teachers and beautiful spirits. And I just, to this day, I'm still grateful to them for everything they shared and for all that I learned from just watching how they did as teachers and working with the youth. And, I was a much older person at the time when I finally got to that point to get some form of training. But I didn't worry about that. I didn't think about it because I was there not to please other people. I was there for myself. I mean, it was for me, for my own personal gain. And that's all that really mattered to me at the time. So I did go ahead and go on to be, able to get my, I got 2 degrees from that program, one in commercial music arrangement, and the other one was in recording technology, because I learned from the previous background experience that it's good to have the music and the talent and when you're in the recording studio on one side of the glass, but when you don't know what's going on the other side of the glass, it could be a problem, and it's a disadvantage. So I said, I'm definitely want to correct that. I want to know what's going on the other side of that glass. So when they say, well, can we do this takeover again? Why? It's not always because you messed up. Sometimes they wasn't ready or they didn't do something, but how you going to know?
And Jerome, correct me if I'm wrong, but also too, that really makes the artist, that really makes them vulnerable, because they can sit there and they're putting forth their talent, their effort. A lot of young artists are out there with their own money trying to sit there and do it as well.
Yes.
And it's like you can get put, and you can get put through the ringer really, really quick.
Yeah.
If you're an aspiring artist and you don't understand what's going on the other side of the glass, as you say. So I definitely appreciate you doing that. I know quite a few veterans that have gotten out and are pursuing music careers. And so it's good to hear you talk about that too, because that's something that hasn't been talked about yet on our show. That this right here, what you're talking about, can really come into play and help some musicians out.
Yes.
Are you open, so like with you working with the children and stuff that you mentioned earlier? Do you do that just on your own, or are you working through a certain program or an organization that we could talk about?
Well, actually, I'm an independent contractor, and so basically, I just have been doing that strictly from contracts. I've worked with. I'm a vendor with the city of Dallas, and also Dallas Independent School District. I'm also a vendor with Fort Worth Independent School District in the city of Fort Worth. But most of my opportunities that have occurred in the past 3 years have been with the city of Dallas and also with Dallas ISD. And it mostly centers around doing enrichment programs for children at the elementary level. And the reason why I specialize at the elementary level, again, because when I say that I truly believe that they are our future, well, the thing is, God showed me that my specialty will be working with the clay when it's still soft and easy to shape and mold. And that's where the elementary kids come in. Not saying you can't help the kids when you get to middle school and the high school level, but when you working with the elementary, the babies, I'm talking about the babies that like, sometimes pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, and second, all the way up to say maybe fourth grade, where you still have some little spirits there that can be really, really blessed by what you are willing to share. And they know each generation that comes along, they really know, they have a instinct for it, and they're very say progressively gaining as far as automatic technical abilities, just because it's just the time. So they know when you're trying to share something with them because you really care about them. If you one of the artists that you're there just to try to collect a check, they see right through that, and they make it pretty hard for you if you're one of those kind of artists. They've ran a lot of artists out of the building crying because of that. They see through them, and that yes.
So no, they won't get any slack.
Yeah, but they know, and the thing about it, I guess that's one of my alter egos as far as being a comedian or whatever. I entertain them. I'm not just there to teach you. I'm going to do anything I can to make sure you learn, and because I want to give you as much as me, as I possibly can. And that means if you're bored, don't ever tell me you're bored, because that's just going to make me work even harder to make sure that I get to you. So if I have to use comedy, whatever I need to do to keep your attention and to keep you engaged, well, we're going to have some fun, first of all, and we're going to learn a lot together. Because, I don't just, I learn, in other words, as a teacher, to teach is to learn. Because not only was I teaching them, but I was learning from them all this time. And they have taught me well. I learned a lot of their tricks and a lot of their mindsets. So it's hard for any of them to get around me these days, because I've learned from the best out there.
Jerone, you also teach music literacy.
Well, it's called media literacy.
Excuse me, media literacy. And
yes.
I really want to talk about that, because this is an area that really is going untouched, or at least unnoticed, I should say. And thank you for sharing that and correcting me on that, because I think it's something that needs to be talked about.
Well, I'm glad you said it, because for me, until I was exposed to and trained in media literacy education, I was just like everybody else. I didn't even, as much as I had been involved with music, no one ever told me, or no one ever shared with me, or even mentioned to me about music being a type of media. I never thought about it that way. And the lady that my mentor that trained me, I said, "Are you sure music is a type of media?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Wow." I said, this changes everything for me. This is a game changer, because everything I had been doing, thinking about doing, and working with children and everything, it made me realize everything to do with the music and everything that's related to it, it all falls up under media. And so I said, I really see now the big picture of everything can fall up under the umbrella of media literacy, because we all use media in everything we do 24/7 in some shape, form, or fashion. Whether it's electronic media, print media, any visual media, whatever, but we all use it in our teaching, in our training, in our entertaining, in our whatever we're doing. Everybody in the religious areas, in the commercial end of things, in the educational end of things, we all use media. It's just a matter of what type of media it is and are you trying to, what audience are you trying to reach is what determines what type of media you're going to use in your efforts, in your, activities. So I took that and ran with it, and it just automatically allowed me to be able to go back to the drawing board and redraft all my programs that I would possibly even dream of doing with children, and put it all up under the umbrella of media literacy. Now, there was a definition, it's maybe a little outdated for some people, but it's still what I use with the children to work for the definition for media literacy. And it's just simply that media literacy is the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and produce communication in a variety of forms and media technologies. Now, they come up with a variety of that definition, but it still boils down to the same thing, to be honest with you. And then when I first tell the kids that definition, I said, listen, I know that definition sounds like it's 5 miles long, but I have a formula where I can teach it to you to learn that definition and make it seem like it's only like 2 feet long. So I give them a little incentive and offer $5 for the first person that learns that formula, and will be able to recite that entire definition that I just gave you. Don't add any words and don't leave out any words. Don't omit anything, in other words. So to see like a first or second grader get up on the stage and repeat that definition or recite that definition in front of everybody and nail it on the head, it's very, very rewarding. And they may not know it, but they plant a seed in their head that later on they can start to analyze that definition and really truly learn the meaning of every single part of it. And that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And to me, it's very admirable on you doing that, because I know that takes a lot of patience to be able to do that as well. And I have to say that's probably one of the key things I learned while I was in the military was patience. That whole hurry up and wait, right?
Yeah.
What's some of those things that you took from your time in the military that was able to transition and you're able to still use today in your industry that with the music?
Well, some of the things that I shared with you about what I experienced and doing my tour of duty, or especially overseas, where I spent the longest length of time serving. It just so much you learn from other people and their life experiences. I mean, people do a lot of things that may be good or bad, but you learn from both of those things. And some of the discipline that the military basically instilled upon me, and the tenacity of, just pushing yourself to do better. I mean, I went in as an airman first class, but I came out as an E3. And so that wasn't just by chance. You have to work toward those things, and you learn and you grow, and you learn also from watching the different levels of authority, all the way up to the lieutenants, the captains, lieutenants, and up to the 5-star generals. You learn that there's a lot to go along with those responsibilities, and you can watch and you gain a lot, and you can use a lot of analogies of what goes on in the military with what actually happens in civilian life. A lot of the things, like with the military sort of being like its own world, you have your own city, your own government style of things, and when you compare that to, I think that's what also even helped me, in other words, to transition back into civilian life, because a lot of what you learn through the military life is very similar and parallel to some of the things in civilian life. It's just that, to me, the military has I would say, maybe a little bit more control over some things than what civilian life. In civilian life, you always have to kind of unexpected. But in military, everything is sort of regimented, so to speak, and they have a lot more control over what happens in that city or in that government style and things like that, which is not a bad thing. It's a good thing, because when you're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of people that have to work in a system, well, it's good that it is very, very well organized and a well-organized machine, because I can imagine the chaos that it would be if it was not. So, matter of fact, the civilian life could learn a lot from the military life.
Yeah, on some things.
Yeah, on some things.
Yeah, no, on some things. It's like, yeah, I know, depending on what industry you're in, that military can actually hinder you. So,
yeah.
It's we found that out the hard way too. And how flexible have you kind of had to, like, well, I should say flexible and like adaptable too, have you had to become when you left the service?
Well, I had to really become really flexible and adaptable to things. But you know what? That really is. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that really is part of what some of the attributes I gained from being in the military. I can't say that if I didn't have the military background that I would have been able to do some of the things later on in my life that I was presented with, had not been for some of the things that were instilled upon me in the military. Because in the military, you do have to learn to be flexible and to adapt, and sometimes very, very quickly. I mean, sometimes instantaneously. So, that's a good thing. I mean, that's a positive thing, rather, And so I think that's what helped me as far as, because, the music industry, and even sometimes in education and everything, nothing is ever guaranteed. And you can have all the pipe dreams and everything else in the world, but nothing is ever guaranteed. So that means you will have to continue to be flexible, and you will have to continue to adapt. Now, there used to be a time when people would make fun of folks that would say, well, oh, so you do this and you do that and you do this and you do that. Oh, so you definitely must be a jack of all trades and a master of none. Well, you don't hear that phrase used hardly at all anymore in this generation, in this day and age, because now the more flexible you are and the more you're able to adapt to different things, you can use that as an advantage, or it becomes an advantage, because the people that say, well, it's not say no such thing, but it's very few and far between that people will do the same thing for 10, 15, 20, or 30 years anymore. So what happens to those people that only did that one thing for 10, 15, 20, or 30 years? Now we have the growth of technology emerging at a rapid pace, very rapid pace. And that, say, interjected itself into what you were doing for so many years, and what you were doing didn't involve that technology. Well, what are you going to do if you're going to survive? You're either going to adapt and become, utilize the technology and survive again, and make sure you can keep being a part of what you're doing, or you won't survive. So that's part of what, the benefit for me, especially with media literacy. I said, when I first got into that and I wanted to start blessing people with the knowledge of what I had been exposed to with media literacy and the benefits of it, I said, well, I already know lots of people will not even listen to me. They won't even think about it. because it's hard for people sometimes to understand and agree with what you're saying if they really don't know anything about it. And then a lot of times I found some people are being a little bit arrogant minded. Well, how could he know what he's talking about something that I don't know about? I mean, it must not be anything what he's talking about, because if it was, I would know about it. So they kind of blow you off, in other words. And so I just learned to don't let that bother you. You know, you just keep trying to help those that will listen. And whether they get it right then or not, I've had lots of friends that told me, man, you know what? You used to say that, tell me about media literacy long time ago. But I finally see what you're talking about now, how important it is. And I started doing this and I started doing that. And I really glad you did kind of open my eyes to that. I said, hey, you know, my eyes had to be open, and that's what blessed me. But again, you know, what we're going through right now, this pandemic, should make it much easier for people to see the need for media literacy. And I've shared this with the people, the organization that I work with is in Boston, Massachusetts. They're like our advocacy group that helps a lot of media literacy educators around the country try to get support from the politicians and legislators to support media literacy education and legislation to get some laws changed to make it mandatory, you know, for children, K through 12, to be able to benefit from that education for media literacy by making it a part of the essential elements. Because you know how it is in society. If something, a lot of times, if it's not mandated, it gets put on the back burner. And they'll spend more time teaching tests to keep their ratings up and things like this, sometimes, unless it's a part of the essential elements. And because that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, Jerome, I can tell you straight up. So we're over at a dinner the other night, and you know, they're taking me through the home and, you know, showing me the home and everything, and it came to the teenagers' room, and this is where I have seen a big dynamic shift. Usually, in teenagers' rooms, it would be, you know, posters and sports and so forth, you know, the type of stuff, you know, going. Now it seems the teenagers' rooms have turned into a studio. I mean,
Yeah.
it's got the camera on, it's got lights, it's got different backgrounds, it's got different, you know, it's like a stage setup now. Is
Yes.
all of a sudden, and this whole thing, you know, this whole YouTube craze and follow me and followers and TikTok and whatever else, and you know, again, so yes, I can see exactly what you're talking about on where they really do need to take a strong stance on the education side of the house into media literacy, because these kids are just jumping online and just going ranting, you know, and
Yeah.
letting their creativity. I mean, let's be honest, letting that creativity run, you know, per se.
Yeah.
So yeah, I I've witnessed what you're talking about firsthand right there, and I really wish they would do it.
Yeah.
Would it?
I'm glad you said that, because we need all the help of people that do see the problem, you know, and everybody a lot of times can see the problem, but even when they see it, what we need help with is people that willing to be a part of the solution. And the only way that that's going to happen is through media literacy legislation. That means people, not just like myself or yourself and anybody else, I'm saying, that can see it, talking to their political leaders and you know, letting them know, like, things, just a simple thing like what you just said, can make them see from a regular constituent's point of view, in other words, that there really must be something that needs to be done. And again, you couldn't ask for a better example than this pandemic to pull the cover off of the problem, so that people can see. These educators, they know that just like they were these children were, the parents were thrust into a situation where all of a sudden the majority of our children are being homeschooled, and the parent was not ready for the homeschooling. The kids were not ready. The household is not ready for homeschooling. They don't have a clue about what do you start with this type of environment. So the benefit of media literacy is that it teaches the children the theory behind all the different types of media, whether it's electronic, the print media, the visual media, any type of media. They learn, just like, music, in other words. Like I was telling you earlier, I went off my ear. That's all I had. But when I learned the theory behind music, oh man, that's so much more to the world of music when you have the theory side of the music. And that's what's messing with these kids right now, because one of the first things I learned in media literacy education, in that workshop I did, in other words, is that all media has some type of implications. It just depends on what that person that's dealing with the media, what the motivation is for them. Was it something commercial? Is it political? What is the motivation? But whatever you create will have some implications. And this is what the kids don't understand, because nobody's teaching them about the theory of the media, especially the different types of media. You may be good at the electronic media, but what about the print media? The things that you're reading and seeing, in print. How are you going to interpret that if you're not still aware, again, of the theory? And with the music, it's the same analogy. You can learn this keyboard by the person putting your hands and showing you what finger numbers and things like this to use. And same thing with the guitar, any other instrument. But at some point, somebody needs to be telling you about the theory. Why does this note sound good going from this note to the other? Or what makes a difference? How do you know which note to go to? How do you know how to create music, period? That's where the theory of media literacy comes in. So it's very important.
I think there's a lot of really very valuable information in what you're sharing, and some very important points with everything that's going on in the climate right now, especially those that may be considering utilizing the military for an educational career in the future, because there's so much that cannot be taken away detrimentally that is out there once it's put out on the internet.
Right.
There's a lot that really needs to be said for parental involvement right now in everything that children are doing that are in the cyber world. Once it's on the internet, it's out there, and even when things are supposedly scrubbed, there's a lot that can't be taken away. And I really appreciate that you're sharing that. And with this being a veteran-based show, this is really important because, as we've talked about on the show before, those that are veterans oftentimes raise veterans. So I know, Joe, you've got some more questions, though, for Jerone about his prior service, or I can see you're ready. So.
No, he touched on a lot of good stuff that hasn't happened on this show yet, and so I'm Jerone. I'm thank you for that. You touched on some really good points. Whether it's someone getting out of the service that's going to be a starving artist per se on the musical scene, or if it's somebody that wants to get into music education, as well. You touched on the media literacy aspect quite in depth that we had not had on this show yet. So thank you for that. One thing I want to give you the opportunity, the stage to do right now is talk of what is in the next 5 years for you, and also what advice would you give to veterans before we close out this show?
Okay. as far as the next 5 years, I would say that I want to continue to explore um, definitely any musical opportunities that I will have to grow in the music industry. God has actually put into my spirit to create, starting this year, a gospel music label, and to allow that music label to be a family of believers that will put him first and that will learn how to share with each other on the benefit of the success of whoever's out front. That means everybody in the family will support the people out front. And no matter what talents you bring to the table, the family will be only as strong as its weakest link. But when we have a weak link, everybody in the family will work to nurture and grow and strengthen that weak link so that it no longer becomes or is a weak link. And that way we will continue, we keep that philosophy with the gospel music label. We will continue to make a difference and have an impact and a voice in the industry out here. As a songwriter, uh, I'm already blessed with quite a few songs that I haven't recorded yet that God gave me when I first got saved. And so this is one of the first things that I will be focusing on with this new gospel label, is to start utilizing what God has given me as far as the material that he gave me. He gave me enough for 2 CDs, actually, more. And I'm looking forward to exploring that and to involving other people to get that going. I'm also working with a person that's over, I mentioned Germany earlier. Well, I have a associate that's going to be working with me in Germany. That's will be sort of duplicating and mirroring everything that we do with the music label here. They will do over in Germany to promote and to grow the label over there in Germany. And that was one thing before I left Germany. I always said before I left the military over there in Germany, I said, whenever I come back to Germany, I hope and pray that it's my music, not a vacation, that brings me back to Germany. And it looks like that opportunity is possibly going to take place, in other words, this year. And I'm really excited about that. And my advice that I would give to any of the veterans that would be coming out of the service, and just like I did, start utilizing whatever benefits that you are eligible for, especially with education. That that was a real blessing for me. Again, for someone that had a great ear, but was not formally trained with music, didn't know one note from the other. That was a blessing for me to be able to use my benefits to get that education. And it was a real blessing. I know that it was, and it wouldn't have been possible if I didn't have those benefits. And so that you can not only use it for the education, you can use it for, with here in Texas, they have what they call Texas Veteran Land Board program, that if you're a Texas vet, you can look into that, try to take advantage of that. And then all veterans basically have, the benefit of programs as far as housing. A lot of that has changed now. There's a lot more funds available for that than it used to be many years ago. So it's a lot of things that they should look into and should take advantage of, while they can, because things do change over time. So try to get all you can get while you can, and benefit and better yourself and grow yourself. And then also keep an album for opportunities like what's happening here right now on this show. Look out for more like-minded veterans that are doing very positive and great things and going forward in the future, and try to take advantage of those opportunities as well, because you never know what God has in the plan for you.
Gotcha. Well, once again, sir, thank you. I'll hand it over to Rebecca. But what I want to close out with, just for me, is you you have become an inspiration to children, and I appreciate that. And I'm willing to bet there's probably no way in the world to count how many veterans you've already influenced in your life just through their own children or grandparents.
Yes.
No, when grandparents can see their kid get on that stage or get on there and perform because of something that you've worked with.
Yeah.
I know this. I just look at them, and but by no means am I anywhere near a grandparent yet. But I can just sit there and look in the faces of grandparents and see when watching their little ones, up there on that stage too. So even though you're working with children, you are still influencing and you're making an impact on veterans throughout the Texas for sure. But I'm pretty sure the way with media is nowadays, recording videos, sending them out, social media, etc., you're probably influencing people around the world and you don't even know it. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Jerone, for every day getting up and answering the call and being so dedicated all the time. I've known you for a long time, and this is what you do, and you are so cheerful about it always. So thank you. And thank you for taking the time out to share your journey with so many today.
It's been my pleasure, and thank you so much, Rebecca. And I always consider it as being a blessing to be able to, share and allow God to do what He's really always inspiring us to do, which is to try to love each other and share and help and bless each other in any way, shape, form, and fashion that we can, especially where the children is concerned. So I do look forward to being a part of future campfires, and especially anything outdoors. I love performing, doing music outdoors. That's a great joy to me. So if I can do anything to help the organization as far as fundraising and doing some events outside, I would just really be too happy to be involved with that.
Thank you. And we want to thank all of you for tuning in to another episode of TVO Campfire. Please make sure to share this with all of the veterans that you know, those who are on active duty, those who are thinking about becoming members of the United States military. Share this with everybody that you know that's on social media, everybody that you know all over. But we appreciate you tuning in and taking the time to listen to all of these veteran stories because they really do mean something. Thanks for tuning in.
Well, we're veterans, so we spend a lot of time in mental health.
Thanks for telling me.
That's part of it, right? And we also teach a class called, now it's called Rec for Heroes. It's a guitar class at the VA, Fort Worth VA. And I've been teaching now for 5 years, and Ron has been helping me teach the disabled vets up there. And so I got to thinking, you know what? The song is essentially 3 minutes with your therapist, right? I mean, it can make you up, make you down, whatever. So I wrote a little bit about it, and Ron is like, yeah, let's finish that sucker.
Yeah, we sit down and
it's called 3 minutes session.
And we finished it in a thunderstorm.
Yeah, that's right. Give me a 3-minute session with my favorite Haggard song. Warm summer evening and the rumble of a storm. Find my direction, way to heal my wrongs. With a 3-minute session in the form of a country song. Now therapists, they tried their best an hour to work on you. Ask you questions, search for answers, take away your blues. I ain't saying that they don't 3-minute session with my favorite wailing song. Warm summer evening and the rumble of a storm. Find my direction, way to heal my wrongs. With a 3-minute session in the form of a country song.
Loretta, Dolly, and Emily seem to tell it right. If you need a cure for your working blues, just listen to some 95. 2 more bottles of wine and I'm feeling fine. Takes the light right out of me. I can find a cure for all my ills, and I don't mean to go to this city.
Give me a 3-minute session with my favorite Patsy song. Warm summer evening and the rumble of a storm. Find my direction, way to heal my wrongs. With a 3-minute session in the form of a country song. Give me a 3-minute session with my favorite bowling song. A warm summer evening and the rumble of a storm. Find my direction, way to heal my wrongs. With a 3-minute session in the form of a country song. Find my direction, way to heal my wrongs. With a 3-minute session in the form of a country song. There we go. Thank you all very much.